Life is a journey full of connections, but as we grow older, we learn that not all connections bring peace. At 70, I've discovered the beauty of solitude and the strength it brings to the soul. Today, I'll share the profound reasons why I've chosen to avoid certain people in my life. Whether you're young or older, these lessons might resonate deeply with you. Before we dive in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing meaningful life insights that inspire growth and understanding. Now, let's explore the wisdom that comes with age and why avoiding certain people can be one of the best decisions you make for your happiness and well-being. 1. Protecting your peace. At this stage of life, peace isn't just a luxury. It's everything. It's the foundation for a fulfilling existence. But let me tell you, I didn't always understand this. Like many, I thought keeping the peace meant tolerating difficult people, staying in uncomfortable situations, and pretending everything was fine. It wasn't until an experience in my late 50s that I truly realized the importance of protecting my peace. Let me share a story. There was a man I'd known for years. We'll call him Robert. Robert was the type of person who thrived on chaos. Every conversation with him felt like walking through a storm. He'd criticize, complain, and stir up drama wherever he went. At first I thought, that's just who he is. I'll just ignore it. I believed I was being kind, keeping the friendship alive out of loyalty. But over time, I began to notice the impact his negativity had on me. After spending time with Robert, I'd feel drained, stressed, and even anxious. My thoughts would race at night, replaying his harsh words or his latest problems, and I'd find myself dreading the next phone call or meeting. Then one day, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I was sitting at my kitchen table trying to enjoy my morning tea, a ritual I always cherished. The phone rang. It was Robert, as his name flashed on the screen. I felt a tightness in my chest and an overwhelming sense of dread. That moment made me pause. Why was I allowing someone to rob me of my peace, even during the quietest, most sacred moments of my day? That's when I made a decision. I didn't cut Robert off entirely, but I set boundaries. I started answering his calls less often and limiting our interactions. When he began his usual complaints, I gently but firmly redirected the conversation or ended it politely if it became too much. It wasn't easy at first. Guilt crept in, and I questioned myself. But the more I protected my peace, the more I realized how much happier and calmer I felt. With time, I replaced those draining interactions with more uplifting ones, spending time with friends and family who brought joy, not stress, into my life. I devoted more energy to things I loved, reading, gardening, and simply sitting outside, watching the birds. That experience taught me a powerful lesson. Protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's essential. It's not about shutting people out of your life without reason. It's about recognizing who and what serves your well-being and having the courage to distance yourself from what doesn't. If there's someone in your life who constantly disrupts your serenity, I encourage you to take a step back and ask yourself, is this person adding value to my life or are they draining it? Once you make that distinction, you can start creating space for the joy, contentment, and calm that you truly deserve. 2. Avoiding toxic relationships. Toxicity has no age limit. It doesn't matter if it's family, friends, or even someone you've known for decades. There are people who drain your energy instead of uplifting you. I used to think that loyalty meant sticking around no matter what, but as I grew older, I realized that life is too short to tolerate relationships that only bring negativity. Let me share a story that taught me this invaluable lesson. There was a woman in my life. I'll call her Margaret. Margaret and I had been friends for years, and in the beginning, our connection was wonderful. We'd laugh, share stories, and spend hours talking about everything under the sun. But over time, her behavior began to change. Every conversation started to revolve around her problems, and it wasn't the kind of sharing where you seek advice or comfort. It was relentless complaining, blaming others, and wallowing in self-pity. At first, I tried to be supportive. I thought, she's just going through a rough patch. She needs someone to listen. But weeks turned into months, and then years. No matter how much time or energy I gave, Margaret never changed. In fact, she began to expect me to be available at all times. If I didn't answer her calls immediately, she'd accuse me of being selfish. If I shared something positive about my own life, she'd find a way to dismiss it or turn the conversation back to herself. The breaking point came one afternoon when I'd just returned from the hospital after a minor health scare. I called Margaret hoping for a kind word or some support. Instead, she spent the entire call complaining about her neighbor and didn't even ask how I was doing. That was the moment I realized something important. Margaret wasn't just having a bad day or a rough period. Her behavior was a pattern, and it was toxic. I started paying closer attention to her actions, how she manipulated conversations, criticized me under the guise of honesty, and disrespected my boundaries. It was exhausting. And it wasn't just Margaret. Looking back, I saw a pattern in my relationships. I'd spent too much time holding on to people out of obligation, even when they brought more harm than good into my life. So I made a decision. I began to distance myself from Margaret. It wasn't easy. She tried to guilt-trip me, accusing me of abandoning her. But I stood firm because I knew I had to protect my mental and emotional health. I replaced the time I spent with her by reconnecting with old friends who brought positivity into my life. I even made new connections with people who shared my values and respected me for who I was. At 70, I've learned to value quality over quantity in relationships. It doesn't matter how long you've known someone or how close they're supposed to be. If they're constantly draining you, criticizing you, or disrespecting you, it's okay to walk away. Relationships should nourish your soul, not deplete it. If you're dealing with someone toxic in your life, ask yourself this: is this relationship helping me grow, or is it holding me back? The answer to that question can change everything. Life is too precious to spend it surrounded by negativity. Choose relationships that bring light, love, and laughter into your days. You deserve nothing less. 3. Valuing time more than ever. Time is the most precious resource we have, and the older you get, the more you realize just how fleeting it is. When you're young, you feel like there's an endless amount of time ahead of you, so you tolerate things that don't truly serve you. Unproductive activities, meaningless conversations, even people who waste your time. But as the years go by, you begin to see time for what it is. Finite, irreplaceable, and worth protecting at all costs. Let me share a story about how I came to truly value my time. There was a man I used to know. I'll call him Paul. Paul wasn't a bad person, but he had a habit of monopolizing my time. Every time we met, he'd go on and on about trivial things. What he ate for breakfast, the exact details of his grocery store trips, or his endless frustrations about the smallest inconveniences. At first, I didn't think much of it. I told myself, that's just Paul. He likes to talk, and it's harmless. But one day, I had a stark realization. I had just finished a wonderful morning walk in the park, something that always made me feel refreshed and at peace. When I got home, Paul called. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. A minute turned into an hour, and by the time we hung up, I felt drained. I looked at the clock and realized I had spent an entire hour listening to him complain about things that didn't matter, while my own plans for the day, reading a good book, calling my grandchildren, enjoying my garden, were pushed aside. It wasn't just that call. It was a pattern. Paul would often drop by unannounced or call at inconvenient times, and I'd let it happen because I didn't want to be rude. But the truth was, every moment I gave to him felt like a moment I gave to him, felt like a moment stolen from the things I truly love. Then one afternoon, I was flipping through an old photo album and came across a picture of myself with my late father. I remembered something he used to say, "Time waits for no one. Spend it wisely because once it's gone, you can never get it back." Those words hit me hard that day. I realized I had been spending too much of my precious time on things and people that didn't truly matter. From that moment on, I made a commitment to value my time more than ever. I started setting boundaries. When Paul called, I kept the conversation short, and if I had other plans, I let him know I couldn't talk. I stopped feeling guilty about saying no, and you know what? It felt liberating. I redirected that time toward things that brought me joy. Long walks, meaningful conversations with loved ones, and quiet moments of reflection. I started saying yes to the things that mattered and no to the things that didn't. At 70, I've learned that time is too precious to waste on unproductive or negative interactions. I've realized the importance of surrounding myself with people who respect my time and add value to my life. And it's not just about avoiding others. It's about actively choosing how to spend the time I have left. To anyone watching this, I encourage you to think about your own life. Who or what is taking up your time? Are those moments bringing you happiness, growth, or fulfillment? If not, it's okay to say no. It's okay to prioritize your time and invest it in what truly matters to you. Remember, time is the one thing we can't get back. Spend it wisely, and you'll find that life becomes richer, more meaningful, and far more enjoyable. 4. Embracing authenticity. Life is too short to wear masks or tolerate those who do. As we age, the desire for authenticity only grows stronger. When you're young, it's easy to get caught up in the game of pleasing others or fitting into societal expectations. But as time passes, you begin to realize something profound. Being true to yourself is the only way to truly live. At 70, I've learned that nothing is more important than embracing authenticity and surrounding myself with people who are genuine, honest, and real. Let me share a story about how embracing authenticity became a life-changing lesson for me. There was a woman I once called my friend. Let's call her Sarah. We met many years ago, and on the surface, she seemed like the perfect person to have in my life. She was charming, always had the right things to say, and knew how to make people feel good about themselves. But over time, I started to notice something unsettling. Sarah would say one thing to my face and something completely different behind my back. She'd smile and nod while I shared my personal thoughts and feelings, but I later learned she was gossiping about me to others. At first, I didn't want to believe it. After all, we'd shared so many memories together. But the more I observed her behavior, the clearer it became. Sarah was wearing a mask. She was pretending to be someone she wasn't, and I had been fooled into believing she wasn't, and I had been fooled into believing she was sincere. One day, after another, one of her passive-aggressive comments, I realized I couldn't continue pretending that everything was fine. The false smiles, the manipulations, and the constant need to impress others. None of it felt genuine. I realized I was wasting my time and energy on someone who wasn't real with me. I knew I had to make a decision, and it wasn't an easy one. I remember that moment clearly. I was sitting in my favorite chair by the window, a cup of tea in hand, staring out at the setting sun. I thought about all the years I'd spent in relationships with people who weren't authentic. Friends, family, acquaintances. So many of them wore masks, pretending to be something they were not, and I had tolerated it for far too long. The realization hit me. I didn't want to live that way more. So, I made the difficult decision to distance myself from Sarah. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation. I simply stopped engaging in the same way. I no longer allowed myself to be involved in her manipulative games or tolerate her dishonesty. And though it was hard at first, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. That experience taught me a powerful lesson. Authenticity is everything. It's easy to hide behind a mask, to play a role, or to lie to make others like you. But that's not how I want to live. I want to be surrounded by people who are real, who aren't afraid to show their true selves, even if it means being vulnerable. At 70, I value the relationships I have with those who are honest and sincere. The people who lift me up with their authenticity, who are open and transparent in their actions and words. I've learned to let go of those who pretend, who lie, or who manipulate. Life is simply too short for that. If you're dealing with people who wear masks in your life, whether they're pretending to be something they're not or deceiving you in some way, I urge you to take a step back and ask yourself, is this relationship serving me? Is this person bringing out the best in me? If the answer is no, it's okay to walk away. Embrace your true self and don't settle for anything less than real, honest connections. Living authentically may not always be easy, but it is always worth it. The peace, the joy, and the fulfillment that come with it are incomparable. 5. The freedom of solitude. There's something profoundly liberating about solitude, something that's easy to overlook when we're caught up in the hustle and bustle of daily life. In a world that constantly demands our attention, be it through work, social obligations, or endless distractions, solitude offers a rare gift, the chance to truly reflect, grow, and focus on what matters most. As I've grown older, I've come to appreciate solitude not as loneliness, but as an opportunity to reconnect with myself, to find clarity, and to savor the simple pleasures life has to offer. When I was younger, I didn't understand the value of solitude. I always felt the need to be around people, to stay busy, to avoid feeling like I was missing out. I was always surrounded by friends, family, or coworkers, and I convinced myself that being alone meant something was wrong. But as I reached my 60s, something shifted. I realized that solitude wasn't something to fear. It was something to embrace. One morning, after a particularly long stretch of being busy with work and social events, I woke up with a feeling of exhaustion that seemed to go deeper than physical tiredness. My mind felt cluttered, my thoughts scattered. I couldn't remember the last time I had spent an entire day alone, without any outside distractions. It was as if I had been living in a fog, constantly reacting to other people's needs and demands without taking the time to really check in with myself. I decided to spend the day in complete solitude. No phone calls, no emails, no visitors. Just me, my thoughts, and the world around me. I spent the morning sitting by the window, watching the birds in the garden, listening to the wind rustling through the trees. The quiet was overwhelming at first. My mind raced with all the things I thought I should be doing. But as the hours passed, something beautiful started to happen. I felt a sense of calm wash over me. My thoughts slowed, my heart rate relaxed, and I began to appreciate the simplest things. The warmth of the sun on my skin, the peaceful rhythm of my breathing, the soft hum of life happening around me. The more I stayed in this solitude, the more I began to realize how much I had been missing. In the noise and busyness of life, I had forgotten how to just be. I had forgotten how to just be. I had forgotten how to listen to my own thoughts and reflect on my own feelings without the influence of others. I began to understand that solitude wasn't just about being alone. It was about being present with myself, giving my mind the space it needed to clear away the clutter and focus on what truly mattered. That day in solitude marked a turning point for me. I realized how important it was to protect this time for myself. There's a mental clarity that comes with being alone, one that can't be found when we're constantly surrounded by people and distractions. Solitude gave me the chance to reconnect with my own thoughts, to reflect on my life and the things that were truly important to me. Over the years, I've learned to guard my solitude fiercely. I've come to understand that it's not something to be filled with noise or filled with other people just for the sake of company. I've distanced myself from those who disrupt my solitude, those who demand my attention without considering the impact it has on my peace of mind. I no longer feel guilty about saying no to invitations, turning off my phone, or spending an afternoon in quiet reflection. Solitude has become my refuge. It allows me to focus on my health, my hobbies, and the things that bring me true joy. It gives me the space to grow, to think deeply, and to truly appreciate life's simplest pleasures, like a hot cup of tea on a cold morning or a walk through the woods. If you're someone who finds it hard to be alone or feels guilty for needing time to yourself, I encourage you to reconsider. Solitude isn't something to be feared or avoided. It's a space for you to grow, to recharge, and to reconnect with the things that truly matter. It's in these moments of solitude that we find the clarity to make better decisions, the peace to appreciate life's beauty, and the freedom to live authentically. At 70, I've learned that the true freedom in life often comes in those quiet moments when we're alone with ourselves. The world is noisy and demanding, but in solitude, I've found the room to breathe, to reflect, and to savor the peace that life has to offer. And for that, I am deeply grateful. 6. Letting go of judgmental individuals. As we get older, we gain more perspective on life, and with that perspective comes an important realization. You are enough as you are. When I was younger, I often let the opinions of others dictate how I saw myself. Whether it was in my career, my appearance, or the choices I made, I was too focused on what others thought of me. I constantly tried to meet their expectations, fearing their judgment, and in doing so, I lost sight of who I truly was. But as the years passed, something changed. I began to realize that I didn't need anyone's approval to feel worthy or validated. At 70, I've earned the right to live unapologetically, and I've learned to embrace my imperfections without feeling the need to apologize for them. I've also learned the value of distancing myself from people who constantly judge, criticize, or make me feel less than. For much of my life, I had a close friend who was extremely critical, constantly comparing me to others, pointing out my flaws, and making me feel like I was falling short in every aspect of my life. Whether it was my choice of clothing, my lifestyle, or even the way I spoke, she had an opinion on everything. At first, I chalked it up to her being honest or concerned. But over time, I began to realize that her judgment wasn't coming from a place of love or care. It was rooted in insecurity and a need to feel superior. It didn't take long for me to feel the weight of it. Every time I left a conversation with her, I felt smaller, less confident, and unsure of myself. I found myself second, guessing my decisions and even altering my behavior just to avoid her judgment. It was exhausting, and slowly, I began to notice how it was affecting every part of my life, my relationships, my self-esteem, and even my ability to enjoy simple moments. One day, after yet another judgmental remark about something trivial, I paused and asked myself, why am I letting this person make me feel this way? It was a simple but powerful question. I realized that by allowing her negativity to enter my life, I was giving her the power to dictate how I felt about myself. I had spent so many years trying to please others and measure up to their standards that I had forgotten the most important thing. My own worth is not determined by anyone else's opinion. So I made a decision. I stopped seeking her approval. I stopped allowing her judgment to influence my actions. It wasn't an easy choice, especially when you've known someone for so long, but I knew it was the right one. I distanced myself from her, politely at first, then more decisively as time went on. And while it was difficult at first, I began to feel a sense of freedom. I no longer had to pretend to be someone I wasn't or keep second, guessing myself. At 70, I've realized that life is too short to be surrounded by people who make you feel inferior or constantly criticize you. It doesn't matter if they're family, friends, or acquaintances. If they bring judgment and negativity into your life, it's okay to let them go. I've learned that accepting myself for who I am, flaws and all, is far more important than trying to fit into someone else's narrow definition of what I should be. Now, I seek out relationships that are supportive, positive, and free from judgment. The people I surround myself with lift me up rather than tear me down. They accept me for who I am, and I do the same for them. And let me tell you, There is a peace that comes with letting go of judgmental individuals. It's liberating to know that I no longer have to shrink myself to fit into someone else's mold. If you're someone who feels like you're constantly being judged or criticized, I want you to remember something. You don't have to accept that. You have the right to live authentically and unapologetically. You are worthy of respect, kindness, and understanding, and anyone who doesn't treat you that way does not deserve a place in your life. At 70, I've learned that living without the weight of judgment is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves. You don't owe anyone an explanation for being yourself. Let go of the people who make you feel less than. Surround yourself with those who see you for the beautiful, unique individual you are. And most importantly, give yourself permission to be unapologetically you. 7. Focusing on health and happiness. As I've grown older, I've come to understand just how crucial it is to prioritize my health and happiness. Stress, I've learned, is a silent killer that can creep into your life unnoticed and wreak havoc on your mind and body. It's easy to get caught up in the demands of everyday life, people pulling at your time, work pressures, or personal struggles. But as I've aged, I've realized that if I don't take control of my mental and physical well-being, no one else will. It's become clear that I need to surround myself with positivity and actively avoid the things and people that drain my energy. Years ago, I found myself in a situation where I was constantly stressed out. There was a time when I felt like I was juggling too many responsibilities, trying to be everything to everyone, and stretching myself thin just to meet the needs of others. One of the biggest sources of stress came from a close family member. Let's call them Alex, who seemed to thrive on drama. Every time we spoke, there was always some new crisis, some new complaint, or a new reason for me to drop everything and jump to their aid. While I loved Alex and wanted to be there for them, I started to notice how much their negativity was weighing on me. I would find myself feeling drained and anxious after our conversations. I started to feel like I couldn't breathe or think clearly without being interrupted by their emotional storms. The constant demands, the emotional outbursts. It was like living in a whirlwind that never stopped. Even when I wasn't physically with Alex, the weight of their negativity lingered in my mind. I was starting to feel overwhelmed, disconnected from my own sense of well-being, and disconnected from the things I used to enjoy. One morning, after another exhausting phone call with Alex, I took a long look in the mirror and realized I had let myself get to a place where my health was suffering. My blood pressure was rising, I was feeling fatigued all the time, and I had trouble sleeping. I knew I had to make a change. I couldn't continue allowing someone else's stress to become my own. The physical toll it was taking on me was undeniable. So, I made the difficult decision to set boundaries. I needed to protect my peace and my health. I gently started distancing myself from Alex's constant drama. It wasn't about cutting them off completely, but about finding a healthier balance. I started to limit the time I spent in stressful situations with them, and communicated that I needed time for myself to focus on my own health. At first, Alex didn't understand, but over time, they came to respect my need for space. And honestly, I started to feel lighter. With that shift, I began to actively seek out positivity in my life. I started surrounding myself with people who lifted me up, people who shared laughter, joy, and uplifting energy. I sought out activities that nourished my mind and body. Yoga, walking in nature, and reading became my rituals. I spent more time in environments that encouraged calm and relaxation. Slowly but surely, I began to notice a significant improvement in my overall health. My blood pressure stabilized, my sleep improved, and I started to feel more energized and at peace. Focusing on my health and happiness has become a non-negotiable priority in my life. It's not just about eating healthy or exercising, though those things are important. It's about surrounding myself with the kind of energy that supports my well-being. Positive people, Uplifting conversations and nurturing activities have become the foundation of my daily routine. I realized that avoiding negative influences, whether it's toxic relationships, stressful situations, or environments that drain you, isn't selfish. It's necessary for survival. At 70, I've come to understand that my health is the most valuable thing I have. If I don't take care of myself, I won't have the strength or energy to take care of others. The same goes for you. Don't let stress consume you, and don't allow people to rob you of your peace. Life is too precious to spend it in constant anxiety or turmoil. Surround yourself with what brings you joy, peace, and vitality. By protecting my mental and physical health, I've learned that happiness is not just a fleeting emotion. It's a state of being that can be cultivated by the choices we make every day. And those choices, big and small, matter more than we often realize. 8. Building a legacy of peace. As I've entered this stage of life, I've come to understand that it's not about the material things you leave behind, but the kind of legacy you create through your actions, your relationships, and the way you live your life. The older I get, the more I realize that life is precious, and we're all here for a short time. The question I ask myself now is, what do I want to leave behind when I'm gone? For me, the answer is clear. I want to leave a legacy of peace, a legacy that reflects kindness, love, and understanding, values that I hold dear and have tried to live by every day. The realization that we are all shaping a legacy, whether we realize it or not, has been incredibly motivating for me. Each day is an opportunity to create a ripple effect of positivity, to touch lives in ways that bring about understanding, and to foster connections built on respect and empathy. Years ago, I worked with a colleague who, no matter how hard we tried to get along, seemed to bring negativity into every interaction. Her words were sharp, her attitude dismissive, and her approach to life seemed to lack the warmth and kindness that I value so deeply. At first, I tried to reason with her. I thought that perhaps if I understood her better, or if I showed her more patience, I could break through her walls. But after many months of trying, I began to realize that her constant criticism, her bitterness, and her need to create conflict were draining. I found myself feeling frustrated, and the joy I once had for our work became overshadowed by her negativity. One day, I had an epiphany. I realized that this person, while perhaps not intentionally malicious, was standing in the way of the kind of peace and positive legacy I wanted to build. My interactions with her weren't contributing to anything of value. They were taking away from it. It wasn't just about the negativity she brought into the workplace. It was about the toll it was taking on my own peace of mind and how that was slowly bleeding into other aspects of my life. I came to the difficult decision to distance myself from her energy. This wasn't about abandoning her or leaving her to her own devices. It was about choosing to prioritize my well-being and the legacy I wanted to create. I made a conscious effort to focus on the relationships that brought me joy, understanding, and kindness. I turned my attention toward people who shared my values, those who believed in helping one another, in lifting each other up rather than tearing each other down. I invested my time and energy in actions that aligned with my purpose of fostering peace, whether through community work, supporting friends and family, or simply being present for the people in my life who needed encouragement. Over time, I saw how much more fulfilling and rewarding my life became as I focused on building a peaceful, positive legacy. I noticed that the more I aligned myself with relationships that were based on mutual respect, empathy, and understanding, the more peace I felt in my heart. The more I avoided interactions that were toxic or divisive, the clearer my path became. At 70, I've learned that building a legacy of peace isn't just about avoiding negativity. It's about actively cultivating an environment where love and understanding can flourish. The people I surround myself with now are those who make me better, challenge me in healthy ways, and support me in my goals to live a life rooted in kindness. Whether it's through small acts of generosity, thoughtful conversations, or simply offering a listening ear, I've realized that every interaction is an opportunity to shape the legacy I want to leave behind. When I look back on my life, I want to be remembered not for the things I accumulated or the achievements I garnered, but for the love I gave and the peace I contributed to the world. I want my legacy to be one where people remember me as someone who encouraged understanding over judgment, peace over conflict, and love over indifference. And this, I've learned, starts with the choices I make today. If you're thinking about your own legacy, ask yourself, what kind of impact do I want to leave on the world? The actions we take today, no matter how small, are laying the foundation for the legacy we'll leave behind. Choose to surround yourself with those who uplift you and contribute to your peace. Let go of the toxic influences that disrupt your purpose. Live with kindness and integrity and build a legacy that reflects the best of who you are. Ultimately, building a legacy of peace isn't about grand gestures or monumental actions. It's about the little choices we make each day, who we choose to spend our time with, how we choose to treat others, and what kind of energy we put into the world. At 70, I've learned that the best legacy we can leave is one that echoes through the lives of those we touch, creating a ripple effect of peace, love, and understanding that lasts far beyond our time. In conclusion, the older I get, the more I understand that avoiding certain people isn't about bitterness or resentment. It's about self-respect and prioritizing what truly matters. Whether you're 20, 40, or 70, protecting your peace is a lesson worth learning. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Let's build a community of understanding and growth, one lesson at a time.